So there's a podcast, which I actually watched this clip. It's pretty dope. It's called the Rap Roundtable podcast. I believe it's based out of New York. I saw this on Twitter. And they recently had a great conversation about 90s hip hop and its effect on today's rap culture. It's got a very interesting spin. So let's watch the clip, and I got 2 questions to decide.
All right.
I got my unpopular opinion. I think as time continues to go along, and it's a constant thing, more and more I'm starting to believe that 90s rap was actually the worst thing to happen to hip hop.
Watch Buddy's reaction.
Drop the mic. Get out of here.
And I say that because it's becoming such a talking point on social media to where it's just like, there's no one's ever gonna be able to reach that height. They're never gonna be as good as. It's become a thing where people keep using it as a crutch, lying, exaggerating, et cetera, et cetera. And it's like, you're not giving hip hop a chance to grow, a chance to expand. And these artists who are living in real time a fair shake. For every person like us who loved the Kendrick and Drake battle, there's a bunch of niggas who's go call the whole thing whack because it's not as good as some shit that happened in 94. And it's like, bro, 94 was 30 years ago. As long as the internet exists, the 90s is becoming an impossible, the high jump, the pole vault, whatever. It's setting an impossible marker for you to high jump over.
We clearly were outside, and we can definitely speak to this. Is there any truth to this argument about the standards or how high the bar has been set for 90s hip hop and how that is carried on to now?
For people who just can't move on. I mean, once again, we were outside. I remember Reasonable Doubt and going to pick up, it was written and De La Soul is dead. I remember these things.
But look,
and I remember, because it was so fresh and new at that time. There was a lot of growing that hip hop did in the 90s. It went from no rap on the radio to where you couldn't do anything without hip hop. And so there was so much growth there because there are people, when they say the 90s, this is a difference between 91, 96, and 99.
That's true, but does he have a point when he says, and this is what I heard, when you go online and you see lists, you see conversations, who's the best, who's this, all of the 90s artists seem to be Teflon on these lists. Like there's always, the 90s are up here with the artists, Nas, Jay, all the people that we grew up on. They seem to be unshakable on all these conversations.
I don't know, man. I feel like the only people that really, you just got to be like one of those hip hop elitists almost, where you never leave the 90s.
Trapped in the 90s.
Yeah, it's like you trapped in the 90s, man. There's a whole bunch of music that's come out since then that's been great. And I feel like that stuff comes from that. Personally, that's just my opinion. I don't know.
Honestly, it's a situation to where you don't want any growth musically, because when we talk about the 90s, we talk about the 90s being the golden era of hip hop, but you have another group of people that came up in the 80s that would consider Eric B. and Rakim, Run DMC, and all of them far greater than what we grew up on. It's more so being locked in a situation and only wanting to hear things that sounded like this. And I think that I remember Il Brown telling the story about when there was a concert that featured the Lox, and it also had Griselda.
Mm-hmm.
They were there, and he somehow all the old heads was talking crazy about Griselda or something like that. Fast forward to now you're appreciating that sound. It's not the same sound, but it's adjacent. It's like people just need to open their ears at the end of the day, because I don't see it's a bad thing that people revert the 90s rap, so to speak, but I do think it's a problem where that's the only litmus test that you're matching everything up to. Like everything has to be like this, it has to sound like this, and I think that's part of the resurgence of some of that 90s sound, which has been putting Derringer and even Alchemist back in talks about being the it producer, because it's giving them that same feel. But music is vast, man. I've heard a whole lot of stuff since the 90s that I really enjoy. And I still enjoy the stuff from the 90s as well. And I don't compare the two. Now, I will say this, though. I was talking to my niece. My brother asked my niece, who's her favorite artist, as far as now speaking. And she said, I don't know. Everybody sounds the same. And this is somebody that's 26 years old.
Wow.
Saying that. Now, the popular stuff sounds the same, And I think that's what a lot of people who point to the 90s always talk about. Well, 90s sound like this. Everybody was eclectic. And now all the new cats sound the same.
You know, the gentleman also made a good point that we've made on this show. He said the 90s had trash too. We've said that. It's just
absolutely.
It just was, you know, the access to it was different.
And there were years where arguably if 30 records came out, 10 to 15 of them actually ended up being classic albums for said artists.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, we talk about 96 and 98.
Yeah.
And hell, 94, 95 even. If you look at the list of albums that came out during those years, they're always revered as classic albums. We don't really hear a whole lot of classic talk anymore. And it's kind of goes to our conversation we had last week because of publication. Everybody's forming their own opinion about the stuff. But yeah, I mean, I think that has a lot to do with it too, especially people that came up in that.
I mean, it's also because there were so many different sounds in the 90s. When we talk about, that sound of the 90s, for some people, that sound of the 90s was Compton's Most Wanted. It was Snoop and Dre. It was Above the Law. For somebody else, it was Outkast. It was 8 Ball and MJG. Those are the classic records. Those things define the 90s. And then for other people, it's the Tribe Called Quest, Nas, the Notorious B.I.G., Black Moon, Gangstar, if you're going to take it to the subterranean levels, if you will. So when we talk about the 90s, a lot of times, depending on who you are and where you are, we're not even talking about the same thing.
That's super facts.
Yeah.
So I
good point.
And once again, it's like, look, man, I love that era, because anytime, once again, we talk about how I've talked about how music marks time, when you got your first car, maybe when you moved out on your own or, you went to college, you got to see some girl naked on a regular basis. Like that is what defines the best music of your life. And some people are still stuck. It's like the people who still talk about, that time they scored 4 touchdowns in the big game in high school. It's like,
Al Bundy
you haven't done anything else that would put a smile on your face and that marks time for you in a way that you can enjoy music that's come out since then.
Yeah.
Like I still enjoy music that's made today in a real way. There are still things that I'm like, man, I just love that. That's dope by somebody who's probably 25, 30 years younger than me at this point, because I'm not stuck there. Some of you cats really need to, loosen up your backpack and put on something else other than some Timberlands and try to enjoy life and culture and not have it be defined by, with you the first time you was outside.
Yeah, I think also, I just don't like the premise of the statement about these lists that we see. It's like he's talking about people, and I don't like it when people talk about people
at all.
It's just like, oh yeah, I see these people over here, and they're sharing all these lists over here, and they're doing all this over here. It's like, yeah, okay, people are doing stuff.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, who would agree? It just depends on who are the people that he's following that he sees do, share these lists. But I don't ever see anybody share lists like this. Yeah. So I don't, I know these people. I know these people exist.
Yeah, for sure, sure.
I've encountered many of them. And I used to be one of them maybe 20 years ago. To a degree.
So was I.
So, but yeah, you just gotta,
Also, like, for the longtime listeners, viewers, whatever, we have been an entity that has torn these lists apart.
Yeah,
true.
Whether it be Rolling Stone or Pitchfork or whoever, Complex, it doesn't matter. We have torn these lists apart just because we can sometimes tell that there's a bias baked into them. Yeah. And sometimes people just don't know what they're talking about.
Yeah.
They might have listened, they're like, oh yeah, I remember I like that one Salt and Pepper song. Let's put them as a top 20 group of all time.
I guess that's part of my question. Like, is he talking about lists from people on Facebook or is he talking about Billboard? Like, who is he talking about?
That was going to be, and you guys kind of alluded to the answer somewhat, but that was going to be another one of my questions is when we talk about the people or the list, who is the most responsible for this cloud, if you will, that comes from the 90s? Is it publications? Is it the OG? Is it Elliott Wilson's, the guys that are from the older era that tend to lean towards that direction? Like, who's responsible for the way he feels?
So. I think it's just old hip hop heads that exist out here and have Facebook pages and know how to make memes.
Which can be seen by a lot of people, to your point.
That's what I mean. It's like, it's just that casual conversation. That's where I see it anyways. Like back when I was on Facebook, like I would see these posts pop up in these groups that I wasn't a part of, but they would populate every once in a while and be like, this is why Big L is always going to be a greater rapper than Big Sean or Kendrick Lamar or whatever. It's just like, okay. And it's like this whole hypothesis theory. And then there's groups of people just arguing this stuff. But people that are a part of these groups are the people he's referring to.
Yeah.
Right.
It's like the hip hop now sucks, but you couldn't tell me any artists outside of Kendrick, Drake, and J. Cole. Like you don't know anybody else outside of them and Sexy Red. Like there's an entire ecosystem of music that exists and lives out here that's actually dope. That you could spend positive energy. You could, instead of putting that negativity towards the stuff you don't like, just go find the stuff you do like.
Jump in there, Terry. You got anything on that?
I mean, really ain't a whole lot to add to it.
Yeah.
I mean, based on what we've discussed, it's just that people aren't listening to things outside of what their comfort zone is. And that's simply what it is. You can't blame it on 90s rap. You have to blame it on the consumer.
Yeah.
You have to blame it on yourself.
Which is the consumer.
Yeah. It's, and also, I get tired of hearing people say what they don't like. When there's so much out here that if you paid any attention at all, it would remind you of things that you do like, or it's carrying on the legacy of things that you do like, but you don't give that stuff a chance because so much of your oxygen is taking up talking about, who sucks? And it's like, probably the same person that everybody says it sucks because it's more groupthink.
Yeah.
That's the problem I have. So if you old heads who's still out here, smoking blunts in the basement with your backpack on, please stop that. Open up. You have access to every song that has ever been available. You got somebody talk to your nephew or your cousin. What are you listening to? What's out there? And the artists that you claim that you love so much, some of them are still making music today, and you're not even checking for that because you're still stuck in that era.
That's a good point.
What about what about his point about like the 90s is responsible for some shit?
That's bullshit.
You know what I mean?
Sorry, fam. I don't know who you, but come on. Even the dude on your own podcast got up.
You see how he got up?
Come on.
I mean, like,
because they set a high standard for artistry. You think they're to blame?
But I think that goes to my conversation about like I don't like the premise because it's like. Sure, the 90s set a high standard, but there are plenty of artists that have come out since then that have not only reached that, but eclipsed it. So,
there are plenty, to Lone's point, there are plenty of people that you can point to that have improved on the design, if you will. 100%.
Yeah.
But to all of our points, essentially, you just got to find them and take time with them. That's what I had to learn when I was that person. Just go find it and take time with it and listen to it.
I've always just listened to a vast amount of music. I guess that's why I don't identify with a lot of these talks and situations
same too.
like
It's kind of it's hard for me not to be negative because it's like I don't even agree with the premise sometimes. So
yeah.
And and there are certain feelings you just never gonna get back. You never gonna get back.
Yeah.
That time when you was at the school dance and so song came on. You're never gonna get that back. You're never gonna get when you went on the first date with some. You're never gonna get that back. So once again, the music marking time. That's part of why you think these records are so special. You talk to somebody from the 70s when Earth, Wind, and Fire and the Isley Brothers were doing their thing. They're gonna have the same kind of vibe because that was a special time for them when they were engaging in a lot of their firsts and a lot of things that define them as a person. So understand that like things are going to move on. I don't care who you are. If you just like I saw the show Abbott Elementary and they were trying to talk about old school music, and one of the kids said something about 50 Cent, and the teacher was like, well, that's not old school. He's like, that's what my mom plays when she's cleaning the house.
Yeah,
it's old school to
that's
a certain
old school
generation.
to somebody.
Yeah,
I mean, at the end of the day, nostalgia feels good.
Yeah,
and me as somebody that's a music head and is always looking for something else, I'm looking for something else to grasp onto. So I don't want to be stuck on one channel. I want to kind of, hear what's coming out, and something ends up sticking out. There's something that sticks out every single year.
Yeah.
That I can add to the same list of stuff that I was listening to back then. So I don't know.
And also Look, this is the thing, and this is going to make some people feel some kind of way, but it is what it is. Like, when you are playing a song from 1995, well, that would be like you playing when you were outside for the first time in 1995. That'd be like somebody saying, "Hey man, put on that Chubby Checker record." Yeah, that's how much. That's the difference in time.